Welcome to a place where hearts unwind, infinite threads that gently bind, love and compassion in every line. Together we rise through space and time.
Welcome back to Infinite Threads. I'm your host, Bob. Yesterday we talked about empathy as strength. Today I want to take that a little further, but not in the same direction. Because empathy is not only something that makes us kinder to one another, I think it may also be one of the safeguards built into us. One of the things that keeps human beings from going too far. One of the quiet restraints that stands between our intelligence and our worst impulses. And that may sound dramatic, but I don't think it is. The more power we gain, the more important empathy becomes. Not because empathy makes us perfect, because it doesn't. Not because every feeling we have is wise. It's not. But because without empathy, power has no human center. It can build, but it does not know why. It can reach, but it does not know who it may crush along the way. It can solve a problem on paper while forgetting that the numbers on the page represent breathing, feeling people. That is the danger. A person can be intelligent and still be cruel. A nation can be advanced and still be unjust. And a civilization can be powerful and still be spiritually immature. We tend to assume that progress means we are getting better. Sometimes it does. Medicine advances, communication improves, knowledge expands, and possibilities open that our ancestors could hardly have imagined. There is a beauty in that. But progress in tools is not the same as progress in the soul. And that's where empathy enters the question. Empathy asks power to look at the face of the one affected by its choices. It asks the planner to remember the person. It asks the winner to consider the wounded. It asks the strong to notice what their inner strength is doing. Without that, we can become very efficient at harming one another. We can make cruelty sound reasonable. We can make indifference sound responsible, and we can make greed sound like success. We do it all the time. And once we learn how to do that, the danger is not only out there in some distant future, it is already here in the ordinary decisions that people make every day. A company can decide that profit matters more than the workers who are breaking under the weight. A government can decide that suffering is acceptable as long as it happens to the right people. We see this all the time, guys. A neighbor can stop seeing another neighbor as human because they disagree about something. And a family can wound itself for years because no one is willing to feel what the other person is carrying. This is how destruction begins, guys. Usually not all at once, and not with a single terrible moment that everyone recognizes in time. It begins when we make peace with distance. When we stop asking what another person what another person's life feels like from inside their own skin. When we decide that our comfort is enough of a reason not to care. Empathy interrupts that. It doesn't always arrive loudly either. Sometimes it's only a hesitation, a pause before we speak, a tightening in the chest when we realize that we're about to dismiss someone too quickly. But guys, that pause, I've talked about it many times through these episodes, that pause matters more than anything. That hesitation may be the beginning of wisdom, because empathy reminds us that we're not separate in the ways we pretend to be. Every life is touching other lives. Every choice sends out a ripple. Every act of cruelty teaches something. And so does every act of mercy. When empathy is missing, the world becomes easier to divide. There are the people who matter and the people who don't. There are the people we understand and there are the people we refuse to understand. There are the people whose pain counts and the people whose pain can be explained away. We do this every day too. It's sad when you think about it, guys. You're not aware half the time that you're doing it. That kind of thinking has done terrible damage in every age. It is the old sickness wearing new clothes. It tells us we are safer when we harden ourselves. It tells us compassion is foolish, and it tells us the suffering of others is not our concern. But if enough people believe that, what kind of world do we build? How long can that world last? I think this is where empathy becomes more than a personal virtue. It becomes a survival trait. A species that cannot care beyond itself will eventually turn its power inward. A society that cannot recognize shared humanity will keep finding reasons to tear itself apart. And a person who never learns to feel with others may spend a lifetime defending a smaller and smaller self. Empathy widens us. It reminds us that the self is not meant to be a prison. It lets another person's reality enter the room. And that does not mean that we lose ourselves. It doesn't mean that we have no boundaries, and it doesn't mean every choice becomes easy. Empathy is not the absence of judgment, guys. It is the presence of humanity. It's the refusal to let our judgment become cold. And there is a difference, a big difference. We can still tell the truth. We can still protect ourselves. We can still say no. But empathy keeps us from enjoying someone else's pain. It keeps us from confusing justice with revenge, and it keeps us from becoming what wounded us. That may be one of the greatest gifts. Empathy does not only protect the person who receives it, it protects the person who offers it. It keeps the heart from shrinking, and it keeps the mind from turning people into objects. It even keeps the soul from learning to live comfortably with cruelty. And in a world with more power than wisdom, that matters more than ever. We are building tools now that can reach farther than any human hand ever could. We can speak across the planet in an instant. It's incredible. I mean, just since my childhood. Wow. We can create machines that think in ways that we are still trying to understand. And we can alter landscapes, influence minds, heal diseases, spread lies, feed millions, or deepen loneliness. The tool is not the soul. And we know that. The soul is what decides what the tool is for. And the soul needs empathy. Without it, intelligence becomes detached from love. And without love, intelligence can become frighteningly clever. Let me tell you, that is why I keep coming back to this idea over and over again. Maybe the future will not be saved by knowledge alone. Maybe it will be saved by whether we can still look at another being and say, your life matters too. That sentence is simple. And it's also revolutionary, because so much harm depends on forgetting it. Empathy remembers. It remembers the child in the stranger, and it remembers the grief behind the anger. It remembers that even the person we struggle to understand is not merely an obstacle placed in our way. This doesn't excuse harm, guys. It does not ask us to be naive. That's another one people throw at you when you try to tell them. Empathy can see clearly. In fact, empathy may help us see more clearly because it refuses the cheap comfort of reducing people to the worst thing about them. That kind of seeing is difficult. It asks more from us than outrage does. Outrage can burn hot and fade quickly. Empathy has to stay present. It has to listen. It has to bear the weight of complexity without running back to easy contempt. And guys, that's really hard work, but it is holy work. Because every time we choose to see another life more fully, we weaken the forces that depend on our blindness. We weaken cruelty, we weaken fear, we weaken the lie that says that the only way to survive is to stop caring. I don't believe that. I believe caring is part of how we survive. Not sentimentally, and not magically, but practically, spiritually, and deeply. We survive because someone cares enough to feed the hungry. We survive because someone cares enough to tell the truth. We survive because someone cares enough to forgive without pretending the wound was nothing. And guys, we survive because someone somewhere still refuses to let cruelty have the final word. That is empathy at work. Not as a decoration on top of humanity, but as one of the threads holding humanity together. So maybe the question for us is not whether empathy is useful. Maybe the question is whether we can afford to lose it. I don't think we can. I know we can't. Not in our homes and not in our communities, and not in a world where our reach keeps growing. The more powerful we become, the more deeply we must learn to care. Otherwise, we may gain the future and lose ourselves on the way there. Thank you, guys. Thank you for spending this time with me on Infinite Threads. May we have enough wisdom to keep our hearts open. And may we remember that power without empathy is a horribly dangerous thing. And may love keep teaching us how to survive without becoming less human. I love you guys very, very much, and I say it every day. You know what I need you to do. Go out and pass that on, okay? Later, Gators. Bye-bye.